My longtime friend refused to pay me back, snickering. Real friends don't keep track of money, and you can afford to lose a few hundred. When I stopped lending her cash, she spread rumors that I was greedy and selfish. Her smug smile vanished when I exposed her texts at a party, saying, "Since you love talking about money, let's talk about all the times you forgot to pay me back." I met Sarah during our freshman year at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. We were both in the same introductory psychology class, and a group project brought us together. Late-night study sessions at the Hatcher Graduate Library turned into coffee runs at Espresso Royale on State Street. Our bond deepened over shared interests, from indie music concerts at the Arc to volunteering at the local animal shelter. By the time we graduated, Sarah and I were inseparable, often joking that we were more like sisters than friends. After graduation, we both set our sights on Chicago. Sarah secured a position as a junior marketing associate at a mid-sized firm, while I landed a role as a financial analyst at a reputable investment company. We decided to become roommates, renting a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park. Living together in the Windy City felt like an adventure. Weekends were spent exploring the Art Institute, trying out new eateries in Wicker Park, and jogging along the lakefront trail. About 6 months into our Chicago adventure, Sarah approached me one evening with a distressed look. We were lounging in our living room, the aroma of deep dish pizza from Lou Malnati's wafting through the air. She explained that her car had broken down unexpectedly, and the repair costs were steep, $200 to be exact. Her next paycheck wouldn't arrive for another 2 weeks, and she was in a bind. Without hesitation, I offered to lend her the money. After all, that's what friends do, right? She thanked me profusely, promising to pay me back as soon as her paycheck came in. 2 weeks later, Sarah handed me an envelope with $1,200 in cash. I was relieved and appreciated her promptness. However, this incident marked the beginning of a pattern. Over the next year, Sarah faced several financial hiccups: a stolen wallet, an emergency dental procedure, and a sudden trip home to visit her ailing grandmother. Each time, she turned to me for help, and each time, I lent her the money, amounts ranging from $300 to $800. While she repaid some of the loans, others remained outstanding. I kept a mental tally but never pressed her, believing she'd make good on her word. Our friendship began to show signs of strain. Sarah started going out more frequently, dining at upscale restaurants in River North and shopping at boutiques on the Magnificent Mile. I couldn't help but notice that while she claimed financial hardship, her lifestyle suggested otherwise. I brushed off my concerns, not wanting to seem petty or confrontational. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, I returned to our apartment to find Sarah hosting a small gathering. The living room was filled with laughter, wine glasses clinking, and the scent of gourmet appetizers. I joined the group, trying to shake off my fatigue. As the night progressed, the topic of finances came up. One of Sarah's friends mentioned how she hated owing people money. Sarah, with a dismissive wave, chimed in. "Oh, real friends don't keep track of money. Plus, if you're doing well, you can afford to lose a few hundred." Her words felt like a slap. I excused myself and retreated to my room, heart pounding. The next morning, over coffee, I confronted Sarah about her comment. She laughed it off, saying I was being too sensitive. "Come on," she said. "We're like family. Money shouldn't come between us." I decided then to stop lending Sarah money. When she approached me a month later, asking for $500 to cover a minor setback, I told her I couldn't help. She seemed taken aback but didn't press the issue. However, I noticed a shift in her demeanor. She became distant, often making plans without me and spending more time with other friends. Rumors began to circulate within our social circle. Mutual friends started treating me differently, some even avoiding me. Confused and hurt, I reached out to Lisa, a mutual friend, to understand the sudden change. After some hesitation, Lisa revealed that Sarah had been telling everyone I was greedy and selfish, refusing to help her in times of need despite my stable financial situation. I was livid. Not only had Sarah taken advantage of my generosity, but she was now tarnishing my reputation. I decided to gather evidence. I compiled all our text messages and emails discussing the loans, her promises to repay, and her expressions of gratitude. With a folder full of evidence, I planned my next move. A week later, at a mutual friend's birthday party held at a rooftop bar in the West Loop, I made my move. As the evening progressed and everyone was relaxed, I stood up and addressed the group. "I've heard some things recently that I'd like to clarify," I began, my voice steady but firm. I pulled out the printed messages and handed them to those present. "Since Sarah has been discussing our financial dealings, I think it's only fair everyone sees the full picture." The room fell silent as our friends read through the messages. Sarah's face turned pale, her confident facade crumbling. She tried to interject, but the evidence was damning. One friend looked up and asked, "Sarah, is this true?" She stammered, attempting to downplay the situation, but the damage was done. The friends who had distanced themselves from me now saw the truth. Apologies came my way, and Sarah left the party abruptly, her reputation in tatters. In the following weeks, Sarah moved out of our apartment, citing the need for a fresh start. Our friendship was beyond repair, and we became strangers in the same city. The experience taught me a valuable lesson about boundaries, trust, and the complexities of mixing friendship with finances. Things were quiet for a while after the rooftop party. People stopped inviting Sarah to group events. She moved into a studio in Logan Square and kept her distance. I thought it was over. I focused on work, got back into weekend runs, even started dating someone new. But then the strange things started happening. At first, it was small stuff. My boss asked me into his office one morning, holding a manila envelope. Inside were printouts of some emails, supposedly from me, talking badly about coworkers, making jokes about clients. I froze. I had never written any of it. I told him they were fake. He raised an eyebrow but said he'd look into it. That night I couldn't sleep. My heart raced thinking about someone trying to sabotage me. A week later, I got called into HR. Someone had filed a complaint saying I had been taking long lunches and charging personal expenses to the company card. Totally made up stuff. I was lucky I kept records, screenshots, receipts, everything. HR said they closed the case for now, but I knew what was happening. Sarah wasn't done with me. I wasn't ready to accuse her without proof, but I started being more careful. I changed all my passwords, locked down my social media, added two-step verification on everything. I started writing down any strange thing that happened. And the list got long. I'd come home and find drawers open, the fridge half empty, the Wi-Fi name changed. My building had security cameras, but conveniently, they were under maintenance every time something weird happened. One afternoon, I was walking down the street near my office when I heard someone yell from across the street, "Hey, thief! That's her!" I turned, stunned, and a woman I didn't recognize was pointing right at me. People stared. My face burned. She stormed over and shoved her phone in my face, showing a screenshot of a Facebook post, my photo with a long caption accusing me of stealing, scamming, being a textbook narcissist. The post came from a fake account that used my name spelled just slightly differently. I had to sit down on a bench, breathing heavy. My hands were shaking. I was being dragged through the mud, and it wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was personal. Sarah wasn't just mad I embarrassed her. She wanted to ruin me. I went home and made a full report to the police. They said they'd look into it, but with no solid proof, they couldn't do much. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. It cost me, but I didn't care. I needed something solid to show she was behind this. 2 weeks in, the PI sent me a text. "Meet me at the cafe on Clark and Wrightwood. Bring a notebook." He laid it all out. Sarah had made multiple fake social media accounts in my name. She'd created burner email addresses. The emails to my boss? Traced back to a coffee shop Wi-Fi, one Sarah had used multiple times before. He even found security footage of her entering my building while using a friend's guest pass. It was enough to prove she was behind at least some of the harassment. That was when I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit and play defense anymore. So I started gathering everything: the fake emails, the fake social media posts, the photos from the PI, screenshots of Sarah admitting she had ways of getting into buildings. Every piece of the puzzle I labeled and filed. I was getting ready for something bigger. But before I could act, things got worse. One night, I came home and found my front door unlocked. I always double-check. Always. My stomach dropped. Inside, the place looked untouched at first, but I noticed little things. My drawer with old photos had been rifled through. My spare car keys were missing. A single red lipstick, one I never bought, was sitting on the bathroom sink. I called the cops. Again, they couldn't prove anything. No cameras. No fingerprints they could find. But I knew. And I was done being quiet. The next morning, I sent Sarah a message. "Since you love games, let's play one. You're not the only one who keeps receipts." She read it within seconds. Didn't reply. Now I'm planning my move, but it has to be the right time. There's more at stake now. My job. My safety. My name. A few days after I messaged Sarah, I expected some kind of reaction, a phone call, a reply, some new passive-aggressive social media post, but there was nothing. Total silence. At first, it threw me off. It was unlike her. She thrived on drama. Quiet meant she was planning something. I kept things locked down. I let my boss and HR know I had a PI involved and shared some of the milder evidence. They didn't say much, but they started watching more carefully. I asked my building to install temporary extra security on my floor. They agreed, thankfully, and even changed the access codes. Then I got a letter. A real, physical letter slipped under my door in the middle of the day while I was at work. No return address. It was just one page, handwritten in perfect block letters. "You took something from me. I'm just taking it back. You can't control everything." There was no signature, no name, nothing that directly tied it to her. But I knew. Her phrasing, her way of spinning things so she was always the victim, it was all over that note. I showed the PI, and he told me to take it seriously. We handed it over to the police. They took a photo and said they'd add it to the file. That same night, while trying to clear my head, I walked to the 7-Eleven down the street. On my way back, I passed an alley and froze. There was someone standing just inside the shadows, not moving, not saying a word, just watching. It was a woman, and I swear she had Sarah's build and hair. But by the time I turned to look properly, they were gone. I started sleeping with a light on in my room. A week later, something even weirder happened. My PI called me. He sounded confused, even a little freaked out. "Have you been sending anyone after Sarah?" he asked. "No," I said. "Why would I?" "She filed a report. Said someone's been following her. She gave your name." I went dead silent. He continued, "I know you didn't. But here's the thing, I looked into it anyway. And someone is watching her. But it's not you. Or me." Apparently, Sarah had been followed, photographed, and even received a threatening note at her apartment. The photos were of her walking out of her office, talking to people on the street. The note said, "You lie to everyone. I see through you." Now it was her turn to panic. That threw me. I hadn't told anyone else about what was going on. Nobody but my PI knew the full story. Someone was inserting themselves into this mess, and I didn't know who. At first I thought it might be someone from her past, maybe another friend she'd scammed. But the more we dug, the stranger it got. The PI traced the IP address from a fake email that had been harassing both of us. It came from a public library in Evanston. Security footage showed someone in a hoodie, deliberately keeping their face hidden, using the public computer for an hour and disappearing. No clear ID. Then came the final twist, and it flipped everything upside down. One morning, I woke up to an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line. Just one sentence. She's not who you think she is. Look at her record in Oregon. Oregon? I forwarded the email to the PI. He called me a few hours later. You're not going to believe this. Turns out Sarah had lived under a different name for 3 years before we met. There was a sealed court record, but some parts were public: a fraud accusation in Portland, a restraining order, and a history of fake identities. She had changed her name legally just before transferring to the University of Michigan. The smiling, bubbly girl next door who loved indie concerts and pumpkin spice lattes had a completely different life before I met her. My stomach dropped. I had spent years calling her my best friend. I had lent her money, trusted her with my apartment, my secrets, everything. And she was never even who she said she was. I still don't know who sent that anonymous email. Or who's been following her. I don't know if someone from her past came back to haunt her or if this whole thing has spiraled into something even she can't control. After learning about Sarah's past in Oregon, I didn't know what to feel. Everything I thought I knew about her. All the laughs, the late-night talks, the promises, it was built on a lie. I wasn't even angry at first. Just cold. Like something inside me had frozen. I spent days walking around the city. Loop, Wicker Park, up and down the lakefront, trying to figure out what to do. My PI said we had enough to go to court if I wanted. Not just for harassment, but fraud, defamation, the works. But even then, it didn't feel like enough. This wasn't about money or lawsuits anymore. Sarah destroyed my peace, my trust, my reputation, and almost my career. And someone else was still lurking in the background. Watching her. Watching me. Then something happened that changed everything. I came home from work one night and saw the door to my apartment wide open. Not cracked. Not ajar. Wide. Open. I didn't go in. I backed up, went to the neighbor across the hall, and called the police. They found her inside. Sarah. She wasn't there to steal. She hadn't touched a single thing. She was sitting on the couch, holding one of the printed messages from the party months ago. When the cops asked her what she was doing, she just said, "I just wanted to explain." They arrested her. She didn't resist. Just walked out between them like she was sleepwalking. Later, I found out she had been breaking into my place for weeks, not to steal, but to be there. She used to live there too, and apparently she'd been spending time inside when I was at work. Sometimes just sitting. Sometimes going through old things. Like it still belonged to her. The police took it seriously now. Between the break-in, the fake emails, the stalking, and the PI's files, they had enough to press charges. But I still wasn't done. I remembered all the people she'd lied to. The ones who believed her lies. I pulled everything together, the messages, the fake accounts, the footage, her Oregon records, the restraining order, and I put it online. Not on a gossip site, not on Facebook. I created a blog. Simple, clear, and organized. I called it The Real Sarah. Within 24 hours, it had thousands of views. Her old friends, coworkers, even people from Michigan started sharing it. I got messages from strangers, some angry, some shocked, some with more dirt. Then came the biggest surprise. An older man emailed me. Said he was her actual dad. They hadn't spoken in 10 years. She changed her name after running off and cutting off everyone. He had no idea where she was until someone showed him my blog. He told me her real name was Rachel. And this wasn't her first time starting over. She'd done it before, in Colorado, in Washington, and then again in Oregon. Each time, she made friends, took money, twisted truths, and vanished. Left people wrecked. He sent me photos. Old school pics. One of her in middle school, smiling with braces and dark hair. I stared at it for a long time. Court day came. She looked smaller. Paler. She didn't look at me. I didn't speak to her. She pled no contest to the charges. Got probation, community service, and mandatory therapy. But her reputation? Destroyed. Completely. She moved out of state again. Changed her number. Deleted all her socials. Last I heard, she was somewhere in Arizona, working a low-level job under another new name. As for me? I stayed in Chicago. Got promoted. Started fresh with better people. I still get nervous walking home alone. I still check my locks twice. But I sleep easier now. Looking back, I made mistakes. I ignored red flags. I lent money without thinking. I trusted too quickly. And maybe I let anger take over near the end. I'm not proud of everything I did. But I don't regret standing up for myself. She smiled when she thought she'd win. Thought I'd stay quiet, just another fool in her rearview mirror. She doesn't smile anymore. And I didn't just get my money back. I got my name back. And that's worth more than anything she ever stole.